Right on 5 on the west side.
Okay, ready?
Call a meeting to order for the Stuart Municipal Utilities Council Chambers tentative agenda, Thursday, June 13, 2024, 5:30 p.m. Roll call.
Belden.
Here.
Crawford.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Sherman.
Here.
Amy. Here. Agenda approval and consent agenda minutes of regular meeting 5/9/2024, financial as of 5/31/2024, and bills as presented.
Second.
Okay,
Yes.
Belden. Crawford.
Yes.
Amy. Yeah. Power purchase agreement review, letter of engagement, Allers and Cooney.
You have it in the packet. That's kind of works because they start working with us. We have to agree with the political engagement. It's a common package. The board has any question, you can answer. If not, need a motion to approve that. Move the order. Second.
Okay, roll call. Sherman.
Yes.
Jones. Crawford.
Yes.
Belden. Amy. Yes. Financial advisor Chip Schultz of Northern Securities Water Rate Review.
All right, good evening, folks. I don't have anything new other than what I reviewed at the May meeting. I'm not sure what you have intended, but with this being on the agenda, so if any folks have any input, I'm happy to cover it. Otherwise, Sarah had brought up a concept about, similar to electric, about having a water separate class for commercial, a similar, like kind of a different base rate for commercial. That's a concept I can look at, so that was not listed out in your May material. I can review that. Otherwise, I'm not sure if the board has any input beyond what was talked about in May.
Is that common? Sarah, did that come from?
That's something that actually came from Chip's presentation last month, where he was comparing our water rate structure with other communities.
Right, okay.
Right, I can tell you, Brian, some cities do that at a different level, yeah.
Is that a pain as incorporate?
It's not for me. We've already got a rough breakdown of the commercial accounts.
I thought is that by usage? Is that how it's done now? And instead you just call it?
So the tier would probably remain the same, it would just be the base rate.
Okay.
Like there's a difference between the base rate of a residential electric meter and a commercial
Okay.
meter and a three-phase meter.
And the logic, I think, is your commercial water accounts are more expensive to service than residential because they have a bigger meter going to them. With those types of hookups, really that's kind of what's behind it. Other than that, I'll work on that. Is there any other feedback from the board? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, number 7, water system improvements project, Snyder and Associates. A, water mains improvements project review and approval final completion certificate, and B, water mains improvement project review and approve final pay application 18, 22,500 Great Plains Contractors.
No, Snyder's not here, Jeff provided a memo. Ben, do you have any update on the project?
So, I mean, as far as the water mains were completed, there's a little more surface restoration that we will probably have to take more of an active role in-house. They've made 2 good faith efforts to seed, and most of what they seeded did real good. This last time they came around, it hasn't rained since then. We're just gonna have to keep a close eye on these last few spots, and as we get some rain this summer, they left us with some seed. I'll continue to seed. We'll kind of keep an eye on them. I know we will eventually get these last few places kind of touched up, but
So you're saying you have a few addresses that people are upset about, or that you just know that need to be?
we just see it and we know.
Okay.
So, but it's, I mean, it's completed.
Need a mo-
Need a motion?
I'll make a motion.
by Shirley. I can second. Second.
Sherman?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes.
Davy, yes. Proposal for inspection of water plant Claire Wells, Viking Industrial Painting, $2,000.
Ben, will you take that one, please?
Yeah, I'll
You're,
speak to this.
you're more well versed on that than I am.
Yeah, so some of you are aware, some aren't. We have 2 ground storage tanks in back of the plant here. They're only for use when we're using the wells. They've not been inspected in a long time. And the DNR on our last sanitary survey, they identified we need to have those inspected. So this is just, they come in, it's $1,000 per tank. They're gonna do a condition assessment, and probably one of those tanks we're gonna decommission because we have added storage. We just don't need it. It actually complicates running the well. So this is just a means to get that done, but either way, it's our obligation to do it.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Second.
Sherman?
Yes.
Jones? Crawford?
Yes.
Felden? Davy, yes. Capital Improvements Project Committee, Initiatives Committee appointments.
We, the council appointed 2 council members and 1 of the citizen who are involved. And the board, if the board would like to appoint 2 board members, who would like to be?
I'd like to, but I don't think my husband
Would like to be on,
would.
but,
I would love to, but he already told me no. I already talked to somebody about it,
okay.
but I can't, so.
So I have a question.
Yes.
I mean, so our capital projects come from a totally different bucket than, say, the cities. You know, our 2 departments are totally independent. So how does this benefit the utility board? I guess that's my question. We have joint meetings that we can address when we need to work together. But I'm just asking the question.
I think it's like a revitalization, improving things so people want to come and live in Stuart. And I think that's the way I felt about it when I heard about it, but I could be wrong.
No, isn't this, Brian, wasn't this what we were talking about, like,
Yeah, so it's, if Jim and Pat are both working on a project, or excuse me, if Jim and Pat both have a need,
Okay.
they would be able to communicate. This committee would, you know, again, it can be whatever framework that the group wants it to be. It's just meant to, maybe you don't even have to have quarterly meetings, I don't know. And maybe it rotates, who knows? It's just meant to say if, you know, burying wire on the north side of town is a priority to us. If there is a road project on the north side, I'm spitballing.
No, I,
If there's a road project done by the city on the north side of town, can we share resources?
I'm just,
That's an example. And then Neil brought up kind of a better point. This doesn't have to be just about infrastructure. It could be initiatives. So you can call it whatever you want. It was just an idea to cause discussion at that joint meeting. So that's, I guess, all we meant to do. So I brought up the first part, which was infrastructure, because that's where I thought the 2 could kind of share resources or share ideas on a quarterly basis. If the 2 entities meet, then they could actually have a useful meeting. Or if there's nothing to discuss and there's no meeting. And then Neil brought it up at another level, saying initiatives, anything that may overlap between the 2 entities that they wanted to discuss. There's communities, Chip, I brought you up on Monday, sorry, but is it Nevada that does a paving project every so often?
Every 3 years, then they pay the debt off over 3 years.
Yes,
And
we have-
replace all of the water, sewer, and streets in that area.
So, and then Chip had put in our water, or in our, in his budget model for our water fund, $75,000 for continuous, water line replacements. So if we geographically target those that, align with where the city may be doing paving projects,
Or sewer projects.
or whatever that Pat and Jim help identify where those areas need to be. And so maybe there's some blending of resources that add some efficiency and save some money.
So either way,
are we
they
not
would
doing
work
that now?
together with the people
No,
of the
Are we
city.
not
I,
doing
I
that?
don't think so. It
Employees
doesn't seem
and
to me as
utility
we are.
employees, is that what you're
Maybe
saying?
we are.
You'll share the resources of the manpower.
And then you guys will come to both boards, right?
Yeah, at a joint meeting, this group would have one agenda item and they'd say, here's what we discussed over the last 3 months and here's, you know, the material that goes with it, do what you want with it. If you don't want to do anything, move on to the next one. That's all. And if it doesn't help and it doesn't provide value, we won't do it. But to me, it doesn't hurt to, I guess, try to make, you know, communication work better and try to work closer together. That's just me.
I'm not putting any spot on anybody, but how do you utility guys think about sharing your time, your equipment for,
We've already been,
I thought you had.
there's been times where Jimmy's had like this intersection out here tore up and we utilize that to remove a valve. I mean, that's probably been 10 years ago, but I mean, and we had a project, Jimmy, you know, comes forth, or if Forrest is doing a project for Jimmy, he usually contacts us and says, is there anything you guys, you know, want to, but
I answered my question.
Okay, would you like to be on? Like to be, we need another? Yeah,
I could, I guess.
yeah, okay. Anyone from the public?
And Neil, if you want to do this instead, because this was kind of your idea, I'm fine with that too, because I prefer that if you want to.
either way.
I was just poking, that's fine.
You guys-
If everybody else, that's,
Anyone, employees want to be on that committee, public?
Feel like I'm already on the committee.
Well, we got our volunteers.
Should I put you them on that?
Working hours only.
Don't do it.
I said the same thing.
Okay, so we have Brian and then?
That's what I'm asking. If Neil, would you, I mean, is that something you want to do? You brought this to, you know,
Either, like I said, either way, like you, as mentioned in the meeting before, I kind of brought it up from the aspect of, we have one or two people over the last several years that kind of have done a lot of things outside of meetings, volunteer their time to go communicate with other service providers or investigate things. And this is what this is part of what this little subcommittee would be doing is volunteering their time to do those types of things. So it's up to you if you want to, I mean, you're the person that's been spending that
I don't care.
time on it. So
I'm just saying,
Okay,
really don't.
all right.
If you're not, it doesn't matter.
Okay,
And
Brian
that's
and
what-
then, okay,
So for a town person, is there a couple of people I can talk to and ask?
yes, that's kind of, I was trying to say, I don't have anything in the audience, but yeah.
I'd like to see Bob Cook. Ask.
I'll ask you if they last one. Okay, move on to the next.
City administrator reports.
Okay, I think we can. Okay, we'll start with our financial statement. We're getting close to close the fiscal year. We are in May now, that's what we're discussing. Our cash in the bank is at 6.7 million, that's page one. We go to page two, the difference between the beginning of the fiscal year and the ending of May, we're showing here a loss of 1.3 million. That's with the project, the water project. If I take the project out, we are at a plus number of 747. Next page, we amended the budget to accommodate that 6.7 million loan that we have, and now we are within our budget. We have a remaining of 671, should be okay to finish the remaining of June. Page four shows same thing, the beginning of May to the end of May, showing loss of 10 million, but that's just, sorry, 1.0 million, that's because of the project included. Without the project, you have a plus number of $39,000. The next budget show you the budget after we amended, so we're all on that plus number. It shows minus, but that means plus. That's for your information. The next report is delinquent account. We have 3 people without saying names, and with a check mark on page 1 and page 2 and page 3. That is delinquent. The next report is the delinquent account paid in full. We have 1, page 2. If you have any question, please, and I will answer. The next, we go to the payment agreement. We have 3 people. We added 3 more people with a check mark on the right hand. Next, we vote is paid in full payment agreement. We have 2 people with a check mark on the right hand, page 2. And the next one on page 4, and that will take us to the last page of page 7. The next we vote is budget billing, no change. Next we vote PCs and bankrupt, no change. And the last one is offset program, just for your information. That takes care of that.
Okay. Public forum. Shirley?
I had a customer call me the other day and ask, and I think we addressed this a long time ago, back when I was still working. Why is it we can't have a deduct meter for our water so we aren't putting it through our sewer? There are people that are aged in this, and I could probably say myself, I won't be able to keep carrying water to my garden, and it's important. But I don't want to run all the water I'm going to need in my garden through the sewer and pay double for my sewer. I'm just saying that this person asked me to say something in front of the council. Why couldn't we have a deduct? Go ahead, Dan.
The 2 reasons I would say, okay, number 1, we could technically have a deduct meter or some kind of an irrigation meter. It would just be a major policy change for us, because we've never done that. And it's, as a deduct meter, it kind of comes down to, it gets really intensive with purchasing these extra meters, checking them out to people, keeping track of them, doing the book work. They typically will want to bring them back at the end of the year. It can be done. Other towns have done it. It's labor intensive. The other option is irrigation meters. We've really steered away from that for a couple reasons. Number 1, like when it comes to water conservation, we talk about water capacity, and it's generally been our view that we like to encourage water conservation. And so irrigating lawns kind of does fly in the face of that, but I know that is important to some people. So anyway, we could do it. It would take some work, and they would have to decide, who is responsible for reading these meters. I know, I shouldn't speak for the city, but I'm pretty sure that, like, the sewer department does not want to be responsible for keeping track of these meters. So that would probably be on us to do that, and it could be done, but that's just a decision, I guess, we have to make as an organization.
To add to that, isn't there just an offset if don't they charge more for the water coming out of that spigot than they do the other one? So anyway,
A big argument for it, yeah.
your markup on the other side, right?
They've got to use a lot to make it worthwhile. And other towns that I've worked in that have done this, which is, just one town I worked in, a lot of times the amount people would pay to check a meter out, they would use it during the summer. It'd be kind of a hassle. And when they turn it back in, the meter fee was $35 and they saved $32 in sewer fees, So it just didn't pencil out. People that use a really excessive amount of water, it'd be more useful for them. But then you've also got the whole, there is a trust issue there too. You have a deduct meter, that they are just using that for their lawn. It's hard to track that. I know that's something the sewer department would potentially take issue with. You can't really monitor that, how they're using that, So it is a way for people to potentially escape some sewer charges. But to your point, Brian, they have to use an awful lot of water for it to be worth it. Same with,
Is there a way to, I thought there was a charge for the water connection itself. If they use water outside that didn't go through the sewer, that costs more than the water used to go through the.
After you go past 4,000 gallons, or?
I thought there was a
Yeah, are
second
you-
tier, but maybe I didn't understand that right.
Yeah, or you think irrigation meters?
I don't know.
The thing is,
I-
that totally depends on how you set up your fee structure. And if you wanted to say, yes, you can have your irrigation meter and we're gonna charge you more for that irrigation water, you could do that, you would just set that up in your fee structure.
And I think that's what I ran across when I made some, this came up, I think, with Carl a long time ago. I think when I made some calls, some other towns were doing that. And so it's a wash. You pay more for the water outside instead of the sewer, but the bill is the same, if that makes sense. So, I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying that's what some of the,
When I lived in Waterloo, our sewer rate that we paid monthly was set during the winter months. It was like, I wanna say like October through April. That's what they based our sewer payment on every month for the year. That eliminated all
so that
those
took
meters.
care of your
That took care of
outside,
everything.
yeah.
That took care of everything. And then everybody just paid, that's how they did it.
The way that we do it here, our water, has no minimum. You pay a connection fee to have a meter, and then you just pay for any gallons on top of that. With the sewer, there is a minimum. I don't know if it's 3,500 or 4,500.
It's 4,000, yeah.
4,000 gallons. So, these folks that only use, 2,000 gallons a month, they can use 2,000 gallons of irrigation water to water their garden. That doesn't actually cost them anything extra. I don't know what your consumption would be, Shirley, but it's.
Mine is
likely-
already at 3,500, so I would be paying
So
more.
she would be paying.
Yeah,
So it
and
just,
I believe this woman probably pays that much or more. She has a lot more flowers than I do.
it can affect different people different ways, obviously, based on your consumption. Like, two people could both, water their garden the same amount. One could have a higher bill than the other just because of the sewer charges based on their water usage. So
So tell me this, is those meters anyway, they lock on my meter in the basement? No, I couldn't malfunction, change it or anything, right?
well, you could, but it's difficult. Most people, we have very low instances of that, of people tampering with it.
Because I just wondered if that meter had a lock on it that only was opened by the people that was gonna read it. And then only use it for 3 months and then turn it in at their cost.
Yeah, usually with a deduct, with an actual piece of garden hose, so you literally go out and hook it up to your hose spigot. So anytime you're watering your garden or your lawn, it goes through that meter, and then at the end, you just subtract that from your use. The other way it becomes difficult is if you'd want to go all summer long and just charge them for all that at the end, or do we go through the extra step of reading those meters every month? This is why we don't do it, because it just turns into a real pain. But it's not to say we couldn't do it. And then with installed irrigation, bigger cities tend to do, like, people will literally have basement, one for domestic, one for irrigation, whether it's hose bibs or installed irrigation. But when you tend to get into bigger houses like that, they tend to just keep it connected all year round. So you're not going in there and pulling a meter, in the fall and putting it back in the spring, and that just becomes labor intensive. So you put in an irrigation meter and they just use it all the time. That's how it was when I worked in Western. I anticipate out here, if we did that, there'd be a lot of folks that would not want to pay that irrigation minimum all winter long. So they'd want that meter pulled every fall and put back in every spring. It's doable. It not to just go on, but if it's just a hose bib, that's one thing. If it's sprinklers and installed irrigation, then they have to have a backflow preventer. And that can be a costly thing for people, because if you have a backflow preventer, installed irrigation, it has to be tested by a reputable certified company every year, and that's a cost. So these are just all the little things that have added up to us not doing that. But I guess if the board had a really, if you were determined that you wanted to offer something like this, we can look into it. It's doable. But I just,
it sounds like to be a very, I don't know, can you proxy your bill for last month and just say over the summertime, half the water, basically the increase in usage over the summer months versus the trend over the winter months is attributable to outside use, and just figure out what that savings would be to try to figure out what the difference would be in your bill, just to see whether it's even worth it. by the time you charge for the meter, and if you marked up water, is there, I mean, is it a
Well-
simple illustration you could do on a bill summary that you've done last month, right? I mean, rather than,
I'd encourage you to bill for actual usage at every time you can, instead of estimating it. I've seen some city like where they bill based on partial months.
no, I'm just saying, in the summertime, the water increase may go up, right, because you're using outside. So take the difference between that average gallon usage minus your winter months, and sewer to that difference. And how much is that?
Administrative, you could in theory, but I think administratively, to echo Ben,
Yeah, I agree. I think it sounds like a lot of busy work or not much savings, but I'm just trying to find some information to be able to get to that.
I'd say somebody, I'll just be blunt about it, if somebody wants it bad enough, make them get a second meter and leave it in there all year. That's your simplest approach.
But a lot of people
I
don't
would
do that,
agree,
right?
that's better than a deduct meter.
But a lot-
If we were determined about doing this, that would be better, but again, you're gonna have a hard time, if you take 12 months of minimums, you're gonna have a hard time getting them to use enough water to make up for it. They will end up losing money on it. The exception to this is people like Carl's, who now has an irrigation meter. Because, I mean, they're using hundreds of thousands of gallons. It does not take long for that to pay itself off. So, I don't know,
I just think that since a person is concerned that they're an individual that wants things just like anybody else, and I think that when this person asked me this, they were looking at in the long term, they're not gonna be able to carry water. I know that's not your concern, but I said I'd present it, and if there's not 20 or 30 people that are actually getting these, how hard would that to be? And it wouldn't be that labor intensive if you only have 1 or 2 people in town. And then if that's just what I'm saying. I like the idea that you said having a second meter. And if they only use it 3 months, then say 3 months, and they pay that meter charge, and, I don't know.
But are those
if it
easy
was
ones?
only 1 or 2, that would be no problem. I
You
don't
think
think
it'll
it'll be 1 or,
snowball?
oh, you bet I think it'll snowball. And a
So
lot
then
of
what
people,
stops that person, sorry to interrupt, what stops that person from, the moment it's installed, switching those and running their entire off that to avoid a sewer charge?
Well, if you're gonna believe somebody's dishonest, and then you're gonna think they're dishonest, that doesn't mean
Well,
they're
but
dishonest.
on the city side, we have people shoving, water down the septic system, or excuse me,
Street, or I know what you're saying.
their, what do you call it? The
Stormwater.
Sump pumps, running them down the storm, yeah, so I mean, yeah,
there's,
I don't know.
there's always potential for abuse.
I
There's
don't wanna create
small
more risk
things.
for that, I guess.
We do things where we can kind of, like we will seal a meter, so we can see if that seal's been broken, it tells us if there's been tampering, but even in situations like that, it's really hard to prove anything. So there is a certain amount of trust that goes into it, I guess. These meters we put in, they go in someone's house, we don't see them for 8 or 10 years, so you're just assuming that.
Is that the more common practice? I've had the same request, I've had other people ask the same thing about this. But, I mean, is that common in other communities that we should be looking at, doing 2 meters?
I can tell you that in new developments, they typically all 1-inch water line. When I worked in West Des Moines 20 years ago, they put in all 1-inch water lines. They did that with the anticipation that people might want irrigation. A lot of these were bigger, it generally just seems to work out, if it's a bigger house with a 3-car garage, they can install the irrigation. If it's a smaller house that's more modest, they tend to not have the irrigation meter. There's gonna be exceptions to that, but the big fancy houses just always want irrigation, so they did that. Most of our new ones they're putting out here are 1-inch services. You typically, if you're gonna have installed irrigation, it's hard to do that on a 3/4 inch service, which is what most existing services are. You can do it, but you need for that type of thing, so. There's just no easy answer, I guess. It's
There isn't.
just what you would want to do. Just based on how we've done it and my experience when we tried it in another town, it was just a pain, and it was more trouble than it was worth. I mean, you will have a few people, I would just say to the people who are wanting to water their gardens and, the cost hurts them, you just have to, you have to be real cognizant of where you're using water. Save water where you can, and water your garden if you need to. Maybe don't water the lawn, which tends to be really costly. And I mean, you just have to make some hard choices about that. You know, I see a lot of people with pools, they would like to have a deduct meter when they fill their pools. We do get requests for that too. I personally look at a pool as a luxury item, and if you want a luxury item, then you typically will pay a luxury price for that. That's just my opinion. Generally see, you know, lawn watering much similar.
Shirley, I just got a question. Ben, one time I was watering my yard, he said, just go down and read your meter and then water everything and see how many gallons you use. I was using 75 gallons a day, watering my grass when they put in the new water line. That isn't that much at all. But that's just something to check into.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, Dan?
That's a good suggestion.
I guess
Talk about it more later.
something that I had read about that, talk that we might have a charger out here, a fast charger that draws a heavy draw. They needed a huge transformer to run it. And my question would be, are we structured, have this payment structured to make that fair to the citizens? We don't want to subsidize that with like our citizens paying electricity. Like REC, your minimum is based on the size of your transformer, if I remember right, in the country. And if you add something to that, like we were talking about, they charge you for it. And where we were sitting here looking at, you know, well, they should just buy the transformer because they're the only ones that are going to use it. But if we own the transformer and we charge a monthly fee enough to pay for it in, say, 5 years, that's also a revenue stream. And then make sure that our rate that they would pay any heavy user would be take care of the extra infrastructure to supply to that area. And I just, my question, are our rates set up to do that? Where we're not subsidizing a big thing like that with every resident in town. The businesses that are using it are the ones that are paying for it.
Right now, the rates are not set up for that. We would have to probably do a little rate study like we sometimes do with DGR and get their opinion, because they've probably already done that in a few other towns.
Now, I did read an article about, like in California, if you charge your average electric car at home on your just normal charger, it costs you about $30 for a full charge. If you go to the wherever in California, that's going to cost you about $100 because the utilities charge them accordingly. They pay maybe 3 times more for electricity because of the infrastructure that charger takes.
You can buy a lot of gas for $100.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you only go 400 miles.
That will start in the wintertime.
And that's my point, that, you know, something like that might pull some people off the interstate, but if we're subsidizing that with
Yeah, our base.
our other
rate,
users,
yeah.
that money's just going right down the road.
Right. And then if we decide that, oh yeah, we're gonna do that for our customers out on the interstate, then it's gonna be our expense to buy a brand new transformer that costs
Correct.
triple what it cost when we first put the one out there at Casey's, for
Exactly.
example.
Yes. And that's where, like I'm even saying, that they need that $60,000 transformer out there, that maybe it was gonna cost 80 or 100,000 to put in. If we own that, that's a revenue stream too, as long as we set the rate to where we pay it off in a reasonable time. It's a moneymaker, and it also would help probably pay for, you know, replacement down the road. I don't know what the life of the transformer is.
Oh, you're looking at 50 years.
Okay, so, I mean, you can lower the rate once it's paid for to them, but it's a revenue stream, and we would own it, we would maintain it.
I'd be curious to see how many of them actually stop at these places when they'd rather charge them at home. And they have to set for hours to charge them at those. That, it does
Well,
take
the
hours.
fast charging ones, they charge in like half an hour. And that's
Really?
That's why the draw is so heavy, and
I
why
see.
it's so expensive.
So before one is installed, your point is to make sure that we are set up from a cost structure perspective that our base customers are not paying.
Correct. And it's not even just a charger, it could be some other industry that's a heavy user like that. It's gonna take.
Isn't that part of what DGR said? You,
Up here, this substation needs to be rebuilt. And then basically, all the line on the south side of town, or a majority of it would have to be replaced to make the wire heavier. Cause you can use a lot of power, say at the new Quick Start, they're gonna pull a lot of power if they put in a car charger. But you gotta rebuild that all the way back to the substation, putting in heavier wires, so.
So I mean, the answer to whether we should, to me, is no, right? We wouldn't want those at this point without any type of planning to get in bed with that situation.
Okay, Dan, you done?
That's it.
Okay.
They're not trying
Okay,
to
we
now.
got-
No, I have one.
Yeah.
I just thank Jim Belden
Right now,
for everything he's done for the town.
Gotcha.
they don't
He's
have that.
getting off of one of the committees and he's done a lot and I just wanted to tell him thank you.
Thank you. We gotta go to a closed session, we'd like to leave these.
Elevated water storage tank possible closed session under 21.51C to discuss strategy with council on matters that are presently in litigation or where litigation is imminent, where its disclosure would be likely to prejudice or disadvantage the position of the governmental body in that litigation.
Need a motion?
I make a motion.
Shirley, second by Ken, have a vote.
Sherman?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes.
Belden?
Yeah.
Amy? Yes.
Okay, so we are going to closed session.